Father God, I just thank you for this evening, Father. I thank you for this city. Lord, I thank you that your hand is upon this city, Lord, and that you continue to bless this city in such a way, Father, that it stands out among our peers, among our cohorts, Father. Lord, I just ask for wisdom and guidance, Father, for the board and the mayor, Father, for the commissioners, Lord, as they make the city business known, Lord. Lord, would you just, Father, impart on us this evening, Father, a spirit of unity to get the business done. Lord, we just thank you, Father, for your gracious grace, Father. We bless you and we just honor you tonight. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.
And the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mayor Vandenbach.
Here.
Commissioner Avery.
Present.
Commissioner Hendrick.
Here.
Commissioner Clausen.
Here.
Commissioner Ludwig. Here. Commissioner Simpson.
Here.
Commissioner Turner.
Here.
City Manager Levin. Here.
Moving on, we have nothing for communication, so we're going to move on to public comment. Residents are welcome to address the City Commission. Please state your name and address, and please limit your comments to 5 minutes. Mr. Squire.
Ray Squires, 211 Michigan, Marine City. I know that some people from Friends of City Hall have boasted about that so many of their members have degrees and so on. But, you know, being behind a project for 12 years and you still can't move into it, I don't feel like there's anything really to brag about. We still don't have a city hall. And I believe that instead of being called Friends of City Hall, Friends of City Hall are not Friends of Marine City. Because twice voters have rejected putting money into that old building. But yet we're draining money from other resources and so on, just to keep the building standing. And some people think I love teenagers. But to say, well, we got $750,000, now we can have the teenagers, use that facility, when if I'm not mistaken, the Guy Center was supposed to have served that purpose. I was in St. Clair today, in their city hall. Beautiful, beautiful building that I think the residents of that community take a great deal of pride in. Well, we've talked about solutions. I think the time is to put up or shut up. Mariners Landing owns 8 acres of property right behind us. If I'm not mistaken, it's taxed according to the value of $200,000. And from lawyers and appraisers that I've talked to, they kind of laugh at that, like $200,000. Yeah, sure. But we're being taxed. The residents of Mariners Landing are taxed as if that value is $200,000. And just like any condo units, like any condo development, the members are responsible, for roof repair or basement repair and so on and so on and so on. So what we're paying in taxes on that property, an empty piece of property that we've been responsible now for several years, that could fix a lot of driveways and roof repairs and basement leaks. I believe that would be an ideal site for a new city hall. We'd be right here by the fire hall. It's connected to the library. Maybe eventually the police could move in, and it would be a true community center. Everything would be right here, easily accessible. The fire department would also have access to Hanover Street, so they could, go out this way or come back another way. I think that would be an ideal site for a new modern, state-of-the-art city hall that all Marine City residents can be proud of. Because for too long, we've been, laughed at. Now, I love Marine City. It's great. The downtown's very nice. I like looking at the freighters. People are wonderful in this community, so generous with the old newsboys and so on. But hey, enough is enough. Let's get a city hall. Let's get a city hall. Turn over that old building to the Friends of City Hall, and they can do with it whatever they want. Whatever they want. That's my take tonight. Thank you very much.
Anyone else like to speak? Hearing none, we're going to move on to approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Motion and support on the agenda. Any questions, concerns, additions, or deletions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. I need approval for the City Commission regular meeting October 19th, 2017.
I move to approve the City Commission regular meeting minutes, October 19th, 2017, as presented.
Second the motion to approve the minutes.
Any corrections or deletions on the minutes? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next, moving on to the consent agenda. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda for Tifa meeting minutes, September 19th. Marine City Area Fire Authority agenda packet, business license for Rantiques, another business license for Abbey Road Music, special vet permit for the Lighted Santa Parade, and a special vet permit for Maritime Christmas.
So moved.
Any questions or concerns on that, Lisa?
I saw in the Tifa meeting minutes that they're doing some more exterior commercial enhancements. How are you keeping track, or are they supplying to you what they're doing? Because most of these ones that I've seen these have gone to were already done businesses. And even like these three, these are all in that mall. Is the mall owner agreeable that, you know what I'm saying? The same problem we had down in the Kmart Plaza. So I'm trying to ask, how are they keeping track of how this money is used?
They make a proposal of what they're going to do, and in this case, they were gonna do landscaping, and they didn't ask for any more criteria than
So
that.
this one is landscaping?
I don't believe that we pay them until the improvements have been made, though, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So you do get something from them before you cut the check or whatever? Some type of plan?
Yeah,
They do
with
the-
the application.
They do the work first.
Yeah. Yeah.
With the application, they provide a plan of what their intentions are to do with
Okay,
the money.
so you have all those? Okay, all right, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Any other questions? Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Avery,
Yes.
Commissioner Hendrick,
Yes.
Commissioner Clausen,
Yes.
Commissioner Lovely. Yes. Commissioner Simpson.
Yes.
Commissioner Turner.
Yes.
Mayor Vanderbeck.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Moving on to the unfinished business, which is the parking study recommendation discussion.
So in the packets, we just included a copy of the recommendations from the parking study that we received from Wade Trim. They outline quite a few recommendations, some near-term and some long-term. They include things such as signage, mapping, time restrictions, shared parking agreements, restriping, potential for other zoning changes, and construction of new parking. One of the things I think that we need to consider is we don't have any of this in the budget, and I think that we probably need to work on figuring out some costs for some of these, prioritizing what we may or may not want to do, and then working that into the budget for the next fiscal year.
So how would you like to start with this? Where would you, do you want a committee? Do you want, how would you like to move forward with it?
You know, I think really at this point, some of the easier things, the mapping, signage, these are things that we could put together some estimates and bring it before the board when we start working on the budgets so that we can try and figure out if that's something that we want to prioritize and include in the budget. We can get pricing for things like the signage map from just some general companies. Potentially, we'd either go out to bids if it's something over 5,000 or just approve that throughout the budget. This could include just something as basic as parking signs. One of the things that they noted in here is that we have some inconsistent signs throughout town, and to work on some consistency and putting together at least a map that we can have on our website and make available to local businesses in the chamber so that they can have that information for anyone that needs to know where the parking is. Beyond that, there are things like wayfinding signage to get you downtown, and then that way you can find the parking down here. Some of the shared use agreements, I think these are things that we're going to want to start working on anyhow. That's something I can work with the attorney on to prepare agreements and talk to some of the companies here that have been noted as potential for shared parking agreements. Any of the other options I think would involve probably working with a planner, such as the time restrictions, changing one-way streets, reconfiguring some parking, and that's something that I think we can talk more about during the budget.
Yeah, one of my questions, was you sort of hit on it after I raised my hand, was if you had started in any way, shape, or form contacting the entities listed about the shared time use or the shared agreement, have we at least spoken to them to see if they're at least open to the idea yet?
We've kind of been talking internally a little bit about how we would move forward with that and
Okay, but you haven't
any concerns.
contacted any?
Not at this
Okay.
point, no.
And then just one, as I was reading through the recommendations of the time restrictions, one of the things that stood out, I certainly understand why they would recommend a 2-hour time use and those types of things. And as we get more and more in depth into this, I want to caution us maybe not to be as fixed on a short time period. One of the nice things that we always hear, and one of the things I experience, is that people like to come and spend a day here, spend time here. You know, if they are coming to see a dinner in the show or coming for one of our festivals, it would quite easily exceed a time limit. And I think, at least for me and for what I've heard from some people, that's probably not the way we want to go on a short time. Certainly, probably not overnight or residential parking in some of the public areas. You know, we could do something to fight that, but I would hate to see us really start to work against things that have been quite successful for us, and that's, you know, being a destination for a lot of folks down there.
Mr. Avery?
That's well said, but I'd also like to point out that putting a time limit on something indicates that one has to monitor it. What we don't need is another law we don't enforce. So we have to be careful. There's things that are good, it makes sense in some areas, but we can't do it. So.
I was just going to say, you know, with the time thing also, I know that there are people that work downtown and park their cars there and leave them there all day. And that, you know, I don't know how you would rearrange that. I always thought this was very creative to me. I got a lot of ideas out of it, and the signage. I know that Tifa has done signage in the past and the communications with some of these groups, but one of the things I think is most helpful is that map, and that's not a big ticket item, is having, you know, here's where parking, here's where you can go park. You know, a lot of people that are from out of town would never think about going back to Market Street, and it's just a 1-block walk. I think that's something that we could work on right away.
We definitely got to do something, because I know with the one-way streets, we do have, a lot of these people that come here are going down the one-way streets the wrong way. Parking terribly. We've got them pulling U's in the middle of town, which has been a big problem, almost hitting people. We went downtown one time just trying to get through downtown, and a person was backing up downtown to get into a parking space, trying to force all the cars backwards. The 2-hour time thing, I've had people complain to me about that, including people that are working down there that are parking there. And the people that are working and parking there, I don't know why they're not using the side street. I mean, most of those people can do that, including our own staff, because I've had that complaint here too. We have to, keep an eye. Now, I've been to a lot of communities where they all do the 2-hour. I don't know how they enforce it. I have no idea how we would handle that here either. But I think most people try to, if they see it in that capacity, they try to stick to that if they're coming in and going out. But I think there are a lot of different things. The parking signs, I know we've had, Tiffany's put a few signs up, but there was one, I know over here on West Boulevard, that had like 7 things on it, and the lettering is so small you can't even tell where it is. So all that signage is basically was a waste. We have to come up with signage that's more practical, that somebody can see as they're driving, and you can read it fast enough without having to go around the block 3 times or stop so you can read the sign. So there's lots of things I think we need to do. I wouldn't wait till budget time. I think we ought to be working on this like from now till budget time. Well, she said budget time, that's not till April.
We
So-
start internally in January.
Yeah, well, internal, but we don't. So if you're talking our time, I don't know, I almost think a workshop or something, or some committee or something to help try to put some ideas together wouldn't hurt.
Well, I can contact Wade Trim and see if they'd be willing to come out and meet with us and talk about some of these issues. I think part of those problems with the signage for Tifa is it probably wasn't a planner or engineer or someone that really knew exactly the science behind signs that designed that. And maybe having someone with a little more knowledge and help could.
But then you gotta be careful, because then we got into that, what was for the bike path, what was that group that we had? That were gonna do the maps for the bike path and all that, remember they came to the library?
Yeah, the county was.
Yeah, okay. So then we had the poor guy over here that had 12 signs on his corner, and I had to talk to them to get half of them taken out because they just went nuts, and he had to cut the grass around them all. So signage is a good thing, but we gotta remember about the people that live on these corners where
Definitely.
some of these signs go, so that
But
we're
we
not.
need a little consistency
Yeah.
with the signs, too, so
Exactly.
that they all work together. It's not one sign here that says,
Yeah,
and more, a consistent plan put
I think it's
together.
been ad hoc over decades and decades,
Yes.
and I think now would probably be the time to look at all, at least, along the M29, the major roads, and
get
just say,
some
okay, what can we do?
standardized,
Yeah, and can we consolidate or condense?
yeah.
I can contact Wade Trim and see what they might have as the best idea for commission to brainstorm and work through this.
Any other questions?
We already have some signs downtown, and I believe they're for snow plowing, for street cleaning. And yet, we still go down there in the morning and see vehicles parked overnight when there's a time limit. And I've seen our street sweepers have to go around vehicles. And, because I've seen them out at 10 o'clock, 9, 10 o'clock, going through town, going in and out. That's what those signs are for, so they can do their cleaning in the morning. And I think we need to enforce some of them that are there now, would help us out.
I'll get with the police department and make sure that they keep an eye on that during the winter season in particular.
Any other questions or concerns on the parking study discussion? Do we want to do or do we want to wait and get some more information back from
I'll
Wade
get some more
Trim?
information from Wade Trim
Okay.
for next steps and see what kind of options they have that they
Okay.
could potentially help us with.
I was just thinking, if we made one very readable map, we could put it actually in the glass window there. Right now, we could do that, very quickly.
We pretty much have the map. From what they put together, it would
With
just
the
be.
parking?
Right, it would be in essence them kind of redesigning it and putting some of the information on there. In the study report that we had, it was shaded, so they'll just have to make something a little more user-friendly that people can easily read and decipher where the parking is.
And a map is one thing, but anyone driving in a car does not have time to read a map, so some directional signage and,
Yeah.
you know, something
Do
more
we have
consistent is.
something on our
Watching
website for
people
parking?
stepping out.
So that somebody could go to the city's website and look for municipal parking, or where?
I think the only extent that we have right now is the study. So
Okay.
that's
So
something that we can get a
We
map
could
put up.
post a map on there and,
Right, and a passenger in essence could pull it up and look
Yeah.
for parking. You know, one thing that you commonly see in some other communities is that there are like marquee type signs that show where all the parking is. I think there was a sample
Yeah.
of that in the study. Generally, I think that's more so used for people that are walking around to see where other places are that they're trying to get as opposed to the parking. But that's something, at least for future reference, that people might find helpful.
I think it was something we might even want to consider is something coming down Broadway is to encourage people to maybe turn down Market, so maybe some wayfinding signs before they even get to Water Street.
DPW has barricade things you can put across Broadway there.
Any other questions or concerns at this time? Hearing none, we'll move on to new business. We've got the charitable gaming license for the Friends of City Hall.
This is just a license that they, I guess, have received in the past, and it has to come before this board for approval. I don't know what the term is on this. I think it's
A year.
a year. And they're just looking to obtain the same licensing for gaming.
do any?
I am not sure. Do you,
Has there been any gaming? I mean, have you guys used this?
What happened was the state totally rewrote the laws. And so there's been a period of time where you couldn't do it. And now they have published and finalized those laws. And so we reapplied, and it has to be reapproved.
It's the first step in
Yeah.
being eligible is to have this in the books.
The Historic Society in town has done this and used it, and it fell out of favor because of this law change that Commissioner Lepley just mentioned. It was bad, but it's been done, and a lot of people like to use their money that way.
Ms. White and I were on Fox News a number of years back on their Let It Rip segment in regards to this debate, and Rick Calm at the state level about the changes in laws, and they've come a long way now, but unfortunately it's a necessary hurdle for anyone to be eligible, and the scheduling of those are like months and months ahead of time. So if we get this going, Friends of City Hall, or anybody that would come to us that aren't even eligible, we'll probably till the warmer weather comes back around again. So it's just another hurdle that the state's thrown in front of them. So, but I would make a motion to approve the charitable gaming license for Friends of City Hall.
Can you get a second? Any other questions or concerns on it? Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Hendrick?
Yes.
Commissioner Clausen?
Yes.
Commissioner Leftley?
Yes.
Commissioner Simpson?
Yes.
Commissioner Turner?
Yes.
Mayor Vandenbosch?
Yes.
Commissioner Avery?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next, we're moving on to board vacancies. This is an announcement. Board vacancies are expiring, some of them are expiring December 31st, 2017. Applications and letters of interest are due to the city clerk by Monday, December 4th. Zoning Board of Appeals, we have 1 vacancy and 2 alternate vacancies. Board of Review, we have 1 vacancy and 1 alternate vacancy. Historical Commission, we have 2 vacancies. Tifa Board, we have 1 vacancy to finish out term expiring 6/21. And Planning Commission, 1 vacancy to finish out term expiring June 2019. And like I said, you've got to get a letter of interest and application to the city clerk by Monday, December 4th. And we do need applications. We need people to help fill those boards. It's sometimes not a glorious job, but we need help. So please turn in some applications. Yes.
One other thing too is, don't feel that you have to know everything about it. You can learn as you go. But we really do need the extra people on some of these boards, but you don't have to know everything right off the bat. You'll learn as you go, and the city will help you get up to speed with any of the material of wherever these boards are at. But we just need some new blood in here and people to put an interest. Thanks.
Yes.
I would just kind of like to add to that. So our ZBA meeting last night, we have been having issues getting quorum at ZBA. And we do even have a couple openings for the alternate positions in ZBA, because that is a board that really needs to have the full 5 members in attendance. These boards don't really have a huge time commitment. Some of them only meet quarterly, and the other boards meet generally once a month. Sometimes they get canceled, and the time commitment can be as minimal as an hour a month. So it's really not a lot of time involved, but you get to participate in the community and be involved, and it's something that we really need to be able to have the city functioning properly.
Anyone else? Moving on to the grant writers contract.
So at TIFA's meeting last month, they approved to extend the TIFA contract for another year term. Linda has been working with quite a few groups and organizations affiliated with the city in the purpose of moving things forward in the city and community development. She's been working with the River Rec Teen Zone group quite a bit, and one thing obviously that you've seen recently is that lease, and that's one of the steps that they needed in place to be able to start moving towards getting some grants. She's also been working with the Friends of City Hall. She's been working with my office. I think that potentially Fire Authority was gonna start utilizing her services to see if she can help them get a fire truck, which not only helps Marine City and city residents, but also our greater Fire Authority area. She's been doing quite a bit. Unfortunately, we either have not been able to get loans, we have not had things in place to be able to get loans, or there are loans that we've been looking at that for some reason we don't qualify for. One of the other things is some loans require matches that we just don't have the money for a match. We have been working on updating our master plan. That was something that we've been waiting and waiting and waiting for to get completed so that we can do some grant opportunities for funds from the DNR. Hopefully for something related to marine usage or park usage, or even just recreation in the city. I've seen her working, she's trying to get things done. It's just we've had a lot of stumbling blocks along the way, and I think TIFA recognizes the fact that things don't happen overnight, so they're looking to extend the contract for 1 more year.
I would move the extension of the contract or approval of the contract with Linda Davis-Kursky.
I'd support it for a matter of discussion.
Questions or concerns on the contract? Lisa?
I guess I'll say it. We've paid the prior person a lot of money, and we're paying a lot here. I'd rather see us go and find some of these grants and then hire somebody when we have a grant that we can get something to. I know the Fire Authority is working with somebody, they're also working with somebody from another community that has grant writing abilities that is going to help them. I just see that, how many years did we have the other guy? 3, 4? 3 years?
It was more than that?
Mm-hmm.
3, 4 years at $60,000 a year, and now we're half that, but still, I think it's a lot of money. I just don't see that we're getting a whole lot out of this for the money.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, because everybody says go for a grant, get a grant, but they don't look at the bottom line that most of the time, you have to come up with a matching grant, a matching money for that grant. And like the city manager said, we don't have it. and yet we're still paying somebody this amount of money every month for this contract and not getting anything out of it.
Do we have a breakdown of what we've received? I know, like, we were looking into the COPS grants and things like that, and we've already discussed, you'd mentioned how, you know, the city was not well prepared to have someone working in that capacity, you know, like the master plan and the rec master plan, you know, that wasn't in place, and it's unfortunate that our previous grant writer never told us that those are things we should be looking at, and, but Linda's been great to work with, but what have we received from that so far? What's in the pipeline that we physically
The COPS
submitted
grant
for?
we applied for, we did hear back, we did not get that. Other than that, there's nothing really in the pipeline at the moment, other than working with all of these groups towards getting a grant. But nothing in particular yet, no.
I was going to say, I've worked with a lot of grant writers through the years, and this is the best one I've ever worked with. She comes to our meetings. She travels. She goes with us. She has taught us how to go after money and the different places to go. I have been absolutely amazed at her energy and her connections. And she's got us, she's got, I know, a couple of the groups that I'm involved with, including Friends of City Hall, going in totally new directions and going after big money. But it does take time. For instance, she recommended that the outside audit be from out of town. And we're working with the Gordon Group in Troy. And that takes time, you know, to get through all that. But she's been absolutely tireless. And I think the payoffs are going to be large. I would hate to lose her at this point, that's for sure.
I don't see a good cost-benefit ratio to this. It's nice to hire somebody like this. My experience with the federal government is that there's smoke and mirrors peddlers all over. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of this boils down to. If we go after things that take matching money, which is logical, and we don't have it, then why are we wasting time doing those things? Let's use the money we've been paying for all these people and just live in our means.
I just like, this is not budget money, this is not city money, this is TIFA money. And they, you know, they already approved that. I understand that, but that, you know, that, they already approved that with the money that they have to manage.
TIFA money's still taxpayer money, and it's still up to this board to make the ultimate decision regardless.
Bill, you got a comment?
And she already said it, so. It's tax money.
I know in the nonprofit world, for a lot of arts organizations, they, many are successful with a business paradigm of a grant writer writes and receives a percentage of royalty or a percentage of the grants they receive up to a certain contract amount. I know that doesn't always necessarily translate into the municipal world because a lot of the grant funding institutions have restrictions on them, and a lot of state monies have restrictions. Have we ever investigated that, or do we know if TIFA's investigated that? Whether if Linda would work under that paradigm, or are there others that we can still see this but not have to put out as much? I mean, is that something we can?
More like a contingency?
Yeah, exactly, like they, you know, they have skin in the game at that point. Yeah,
Right.
don't get me wrong, Linda's been wonderful, but, you know, we do hear it a lot. I think Linda's been great. It is about a long game. I feel like we weren't well-served necessarily with the previous grant writer, and I certainly see that, but I do also feel like we're kind of just on the cusp of maybe having a lot of good stuff coming towards us, but we do hear it a lot, that what do we get for it? And we haven't gotten a lot out of grant writers for a while now, so I'm just trying to find maybe another solution that might work. Do we know anything about that? Have we looked into that?
I don't know of any other alternatives.
My experience with grant writers is that there's two things going on. There's the actual grant, and then there's the prep
Yep.
of the city for the grant.
In other words, you can't wait till there's a grant in front of you and say, whoa, let's do that one, because you had to do 7 things over the last 2
Yep.
years to be ready for that one. And sometimes the role of the grant writer is to prepare you for the grant, or to prepare you to be in an opportunity to get the grant. And I know that takes time.
I agree, and I would argue that's what Linda's really been doing a great job with.
The prep.
Yep.
Right. But I also understand the return if the city just isn't postured to meet the demands of the grant, that's another issue. Because a lot of them these days are matching. You know, a lot of them are matching.
And in the fire service, a lot of it, as Chief Slankster has been going through, is getting the proper paperwork and the proper numbering to your organization to be able to even apply for the grant.
Yeah.
And that's some of the biggest hurdles that this building's ran into, is because,
Doesn't qualify.
and we've had a past number, somebody's applied for grants back in the day, and we can't access that file, or we've changed because now we're an area fire authority. Well, you can't use the old numbering system, you have to apply for a new number system. Well, you can't apply for new numbers because you already have one. Well, you just told us we can't apply. So that is some of the issues that the fire department's trying to do their own grant. So that's some of the issues you'll run into without a liaison person to help guide you through it. So it's a catch-22. And a lot of the fire departments try and write their own grants. Some are very successful, and some we haven't been able. We ran, Joe, I think you wrote a couple grants now, and we've been successful on some very small grants, but nothing very large yet.
It is very time consuming. I do a lot for the school district. We fall in the same boat, is that, you know, there's a number of us, different buildings and user groups, and, you know, we don't qualify because the district budget's this big, but our budget's this big, or there are after-school programs, and we don't qualify just because we fall under that blanket entity, and, you know, but it's very time consuming to try and just chase that money. I spend a lot of hours at home just researching and typing and for the chance to have it.
It is time consuming, and the other thing is, it is good for us to take a look at some of the other cities she's been working with, and not much happened in the first year. But Utica has a ballpark. You can go around to the New Baltimore, has a whole new, you know, she was involved in all of that. And to have all this prep work done and then cut it off at the knees, I think would be counterproductive.
I've also heard some counter issues with the city of Mount Clemens, where she's worked, and it hasn't been as effective there. So, I mean,
And some of those communities have a lot more money than we do too. I mean, let's face it. But I think we've spent an awful lot of money for the last 5 or 6 years on this without a whole lot of benefit.
any more questions or concerns? Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Clausen,
No.
Commissioner Ludwig,
Yes,
Commissioner Simpson,
Yes.
Commissioner Turner.
Yes.
Mayor Van Bosch,
Yes.
Commissioner Avery,
No.
Commissioner Hendrick.
No,
Motion carries.
All right, moving on.
before you move on, I guess if we're gonna renew this, then I wanna make sure we get better progress reports and see more things that we haven't been seeing.
Yep. Next, moving on to City Hall discussion. I've actually brought this up, and I may be causing my own headache, but we've had different discussions where the current situation, we're not ADA compliant as we should be.
We're ADA compliant.
As we
It's not
should be.
optimal.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I said, we're as we should be, or as we could be. We need to either invest in that piece of property, or, you know, do something else, or what does the community want out of a city hall? And I think Elaine's put together a really nice memo, if you'd like to go through it briefly for us.
No problem. So one of the things that has been an issue really since I've been here for the 2 years is I've heard a lot of people talking about how we've been displaced and taken over the community center, and 300 Broadway has been vacant for 12 years now, and a lot of people are talking about, what are you gonna do? How do we move forward in the future? One of the things that, keeps getting brought up is the past, the past, the past. Things that have been done in the past, any spending at 300 Broadway or anything that people think just wasn't right, has been done, and it's in the past, and there's absolutely nothing we can do to change that. We are where we are, and things that have been done, we cannot revise history. So we all, including the community, and hopefully we'll get some feedback, is that we need to find a way to constructively move forward and address the issue that we have right now, and that is that we have our city offices in a community center that was to be designated as a community center. Not that building in particular. There were funds that were graciously donated from the Guy family. Actually, I'm sorry, it was a couple houses that were donated, and proceeds from that were used to purchase what was the DTE facility and became the Guy Community Center. So moving forward, we're really involving 3 buildings here. We have the Guy Center, which was the community center. It technically still is the community center, and we're just kind of having our offices in there for 12 years now. 300 Broadway, and then this building as well, since we have no other location to host our meetings, so we have all of our meetings here. 300 Broadway, just a little quick history from my perspective. What I have heard and know or believed to be true is that at one point in time there were issues with the building. I guess bricks were falling apart, and the building may or may not have had some structural issues. The police first vacated, and then the city offices vacated and moved into the Guy Center. There were some improvements made with TIFA funds at the time, and there were drawings that were put together by an architect and estimates from those drawings for the renovation that at the time totaled somewhere between $2 and $3 million. I know there have been some plans, and people have kind of looked at that and tweaked the numbers and coming up with some other alternative ideas. Since then, we have signed a lease with the River Rec Teen Zone to occupy a portion of the space over there. Conversations that I've had in the office, I understand the amount of people and cubicles, desks that we have in the office are a little more than what was in there at the time when city offices were occupying 300 Broadway. So there are issues with the space in the building, and I think that's one of the reasons why River Rec Teen Zone was approved a lease in there, recognizing the fact that there are issues with the space and being able to get our offices as they exist today into that space. Not to mention all of the additional costs with getting an elevator in there and making the property ADA compliant, updating all the electricity and plumbing and everything that's in there. The issues that we have with 303 South Water Street, the Guy Center as our offices, is that it's really not the ideal location. Like we talked about earlier, parking is always an issue downtown. The access to the building is difficult for a lot of people. It does meet the absolute minimum, probably ADA standards by today's right. It does have a elevator, chair, lift that can get people up to the administrative area for any type of meeting or business that they need to conduct. Very often we do have people in the office that will come down the stairs and get bills or any information that people are coming to drop off in the office and help people out, even sometimes going as far as going out to the car for people that unfortunately have some mobility issues. Other issues, the building really isn't well suited to our function. It's a very open space. We have a lot of issues with trying to be able to hear conversations and things on the phone because there's a lot of echo in there. my back office isn't really an office, it's a big open space for a conference room, a kitchen, break room, my office. It's not really conducive to some of the issues that I as a manager need to discuss either with the attorney or with employees, staff. I do have people that come in the office and like to have confidential conversations that are very personal. It's just not that conducive, and then we also have the issue that we have all of our storage and supplies in a basement. That requires going down pretty narrow stairs, narrow steep stairs, there's 15 stairs. If we, for some reason, have someone in the office that has a mobility issue, they would not be able to utilize the basement. And if we have an issue with egress at the front door, there would be issues trying to get out and down those stairs. So it can be a safety issue for someone that has mobility issues as well. The other space I mentioned is obviously this meeting space. This is a shared space that we have with the fire authority. We own the building. We in turn are leasing it out to the fire authority, and they graciously allow us to, in essence, take the space back and utilize it for our meeting spaces and for the elections, which can be up to 4 times a year and really are all-encompassing of the space, the parking, and with this being an emergency facility, sometimes it does get very problematic with the parking. In the 2 years that I have been here, I have heard a lot of things from people, and I tried to put together a comprehensive list of all of the different ideas and options that I've heard from people throughout the years just to spawn a conversation. One thing to keep in mind, not everything on this list may be feasible either for financial or other reasons. I don't think that it's all-inclusive. There's probably other ideas that everybody else may have heard or knows about. Matter of fact, I even kind of have made notes and put a couple more on here. One of the issues, no matter what, is going to be funding. And we would need to find some way to come up with money to be able to do something. The amount of space that I've roughly calculated that we need at a minimum is 6,000 square feet. Right now, that would include the office space, the storage space, and a meeting space about this size. Obviously, we want some type of public restrooms as well. Initial estimates that I have heard from a architect that I contacted, our pricing for new construction is about $200 a square foot, which would equate for a 6,000 square foot building to 1.2 million. If you go with a renovation of an existing building, it could be closer to $100 a square foot, which would be about 600,000. We do have some money. Looks like we are going to have another 200,000 to 300,000 surplus funds from this budget year. We still have about 100 from last year that we, as of yet, have not spent. We have money in our fund balance that we could tap into. I think there's about 800,000, actually maybe even a little bit more than that. But keeping in mind that we do need to have a rainy day fund and cannot completely deplete that fund. Tifa certainly has money that could be available, and in their plan, one of the things that they have is a plan for improvements, capital improvements. They, at one point in time, I believe when they were working on the budget, had even talked about budgeting for engineering plans for a building. Potential for grant funding. There are a couple things that I've been talking to Linda about on ideas how we could potentially at least get some money to help for a new building or even a renovation, and that would be if, say, we did a tornado shelter, because we don't have a tornado shelter really that I'm aware of. I know most schools typically have some space dedicated to tornado shelters, but we don't have a public space as a tornado shelter. One other one, we have the farmer's market, and if we incorporated something with the farmer's market into a new building, that would be another way to try and get some grant funding. There isn't really a lot of grant funding, unfortunately, for buildings, as we know, dealing with trying to renovate 300 Broadway. But anything, I think financially, from any type of grant that we could get to help offset some of the cost would be helpful. That's kind of all of the information summarized in the memo that I prepared. Really, what we need to try and do is find a way to move forward. One thing that I think we could do is maybe take a look at the list that I put together, see if there's anything that could be added to the list, maybe if there are ideas that can be taken off the list. We might want to consider either working with our assessor or a realtor or someone to determine if there's any vacant parcels or buildings that could potentially support our space. Just because something isn't for sale doesn't mean that we couldn't solicit the owners of the property and see if they're interested in selling a property. Beyond that, it's really something that we need to determine what our next step is going to be and how we envision moving forward and what we want and need.
Question and a comment. The question is, since we are moving forward with the River Rec Teen Center, what is then the function of the community center concept that we talk about? What would we house in some other structure?
The purpose of like a community center. I know in the
Yep.
past, they've had like senior events and things like that. Typically, you have homeowners associations that use the space for their meetings.
Nonprofit groups.
Right.
Use it.
We have this
The Washington
center
Life
on
Center.
Washington
Yeah.
Life, yes. To me, that seems to cover anything else that needs.
And that was one of the.
That's a cost versus the community center was free. And we had a whole group of card players, that's why we give them $500 every year. We give them that money because they've had to go rent space instead of being able to use the community center that they got kicked out of. So there was a lot of people, there wasn't just that people would use it for showers, they used it for all sorts of things back in the day. I remember when they used it, but a lot of it was for the card playing and a lot of the seniors and to have functions in there. So yeah, it's costing us because we pay them $500 a year in a contract because we kicked them out of their space.
But if we had any building, that's a cost also.
But you gotta have the building.
This, I mean, if we want people to play cards, we should ship them off to one of these casino things, but.
But that was
the
given to
other-
them.
The comment that I wanted to include here is this list is, as you say, very inclusive, but without any funding notes on there, or estimates, I'm sorry. It makes it pretty hard to evaluate anything. First, what would it be worth? And second, are we looking at something that we can't afford? Thank you.
Yeah, I want to address a couple points specifically about the, people have called the Guy Center, Rec Center, Teen Center, those types of things. My understanding after talking to lots and lots and lots of people is that, yeah, there were some meetings there, there's certainly the folks that played cards, but by and large, it was never really used as a teen center or a rec center and those types of things. It was more of a, an ad hoc meeting space, Now that we have the Washington Life Center, my understanding is there's a separate card group there in addition to the group that we offset their expenses for the church as well. So, I mean, we've got this new entity into town that could sort of address some of the needs that some of the folks we've disenfranchised in the past can now have more opportunity there in a space that's better suited. Both of the church and the Washington Life Center are much easier to access. That's why the one church moved and bought the other churches, because it's zero accessibility, where they still have the accessibility issue there at the Guy Center. So I just wanted to put that out. And certainly if anyone knows any different in the past 15, 20 years that building's been used for something else, let me know, because everyone I've talked to has said that was never, actively use, it was more for meetings. And not that that's not important, but just to clarify, working in the teen zone, a lot of people have said, well, move in there. Well, that doesn't suit the teen zone needs square footage wise and many other reasons, but it was never used for that. Certainly that was the intention, but I think we also need to be careful when we're looking at financing. We have a lot of issues with roads and sewer and water and sewer infrastructure that we know is going to be an issue. We, not too long ago, saw the preliminary SAW grant reports, and we know that we're well behind, as are many people in Michigan, with that. If we're talking about financing one project, we need to look at those other things too, because that's going to be an issue far greater than, I think, a facility. You know, one of the things I think we should look into is maybe some non-traditional things like perhaps we could render service at a remote location, say the PD on certain days of the week, you know, by appointment, you know, for individuals that have issues, say randomly, every Wednesday, that counter is available and that lot is available. And we'd have to play around, of course, with staffing and things like that. But, because I think it's important to be able to render services at any time someone needs it. But, those are the types of things we can be doing right now, regardless of what a facility does, to better serve our individuals. I also think we need to be looking towards the future as well. What are we finding? We're finding that as we move into the future, things are being delivered remotely, online, paperless, and I think what I hear from city staff is that more and more things are uploaded to the state and federal, right? We're less and less paper. Is that?
No, not really.
Okay.
So we have a lot of requirements that we're required to maintain data
Yep,
that will
but
keep growing.
But that's
So-
a storage thing. I'm talking about how citizens use service, render service, and I think that.
It's a mix.
Okay, but I
Some-
mean, moving forward, we know that that's a reality for everybody. So we
There's
need
some
to, we
things
need to
that-
take that into account as well as because yes, it's City Hall, but what are we talking about? How are we rendering service to the city? And so we want to make sure that those issues are addressed as well, so people can utilize, expanding use of the website and, those types of things. A computer kiosk or something like that. So I would encourage us to think non-traditional to make sure that it's not just a building that we're talking about. So often we get stymied in what used to happen and what happened 30 years ago, but it's not just a building, it's how we're rendering service. And I think that's so important to take into account as we're talking about this issue.
Yeah, there are a lot of great things that I would love to be able to do through our SAW grant. One of the things that we're still working on trying to figure out is to be able to get some software. But the unfortunate aspect of that is that incurs new ongoing software costs to be able to maintain a database, probably on a cloud storage. So everything unfortunately comes with a price.
I was just going to say, according to the Times Herald, you wanted input from the community. Is there anybody here that wants to speak?
Absolutely. Anybody would like to speak on this?
You're a star.
Judy White, 8757 Anchor Bay Drive, Clay Township. I wish I could say I hurt my back parasailing or something. My personal preference for City Hall, and I emphasize my personal preference, has always been to restore the interior and see city government return to its proper home. The people of Marine City paid for the building, and the people of Marine City built the structure. The wood for the posts and beams and the clay for the bricks come from here, and it can't get more Marine City than that. For about 125 years, the building was the heart of the Marine City community life and political identity. It served the polis as the housing for its legal identity and its social and cultural life. The weight of history, the pull of that tradition should not be ignored and certainly not trivialized. Part of the intent, and partly by accident, the building survived mismanagement and the awful decades when urban renewal ran rampant. It is common now to hear people say that the building is too small to house city government and that city employees don't want to work there. These are convenient arguments that ignore the possibilities of intelligent design and state-of-the-art restoration. But my personal preference for City Hall has to bow to another reality. Friends of City Hall has been given precise instructions for becoming eligible for large foundation grants for interior restoration. Linda Davis Kirksey has been wonderfully supportive. We have been preparing ourselves via an independent audit and a professional assistance in developing a business plan for City Hall and opening talks with the city on leasing the building. We envision the building for the entire city with multi-purpose rooms and offices that could house a business incubator, perhaps the Chamber of Commerce, should they so wish, a fundraising gift shop, a meeting hall for city government, which would also be an entertainment room serving both the banquet center and the new hotel, and also serving the performing arts. An elevator system serving basement to Opera House would give full access to all events and offices. We want to offer a meeting room for local societies and clubs, an exhibit space for commercial and cultural presentations, and a comfortable site for lectures and other presentations. I think the building would be full of life, and given our intent, may come close to being the heart of community life once again. Thank you.
Excuse me. Mr. Moran.
Good afternoon, good evening, good day, mates. Joe Moran, 710 Pleasant Street. I would like to echo the previous speaker's comments and support the efforts that are currently snowballing, I guess is the word for it, in terms of interest and funding coming toward the city, particularly for 300 Broadway. I think the discussion that you just had points to the bigger problem, the elephant in the room, that this commission has continually, over the years, avoided. And that is the fact that we do not have sufficient revenues to support the needs of this city. Kicking the can down the road year after year has reached a point of diminishing returns. We have sidewalks to repair, we have roadways to repair, sewers to repair. We have to do something about City Hall. We have a laundry list as long as my arm, and if you want to measure it, it's 36 inches, that we continually have to bump because we don't have the funding. We don't even have the funding to get the funding. When are you going to address the elephant in the room? You must be doing everything you can to develop new revenue streams. I'm not talking about grants. A grant is a one-time handout. You can't depend on it Many of them we don't even qualify for. You need a revenue stream. Now, we had a great big to-do about PA 33. Nobody wanted more taxes. PA 33 at pennies per resident would have been a terrific shot in the arm in terms of revenue stream for this city. Now we are faced with roads, City Hall, and this laundry list of things that we are going to have to do something. We're going to have a millage, but we cannot put everything we need on the backs of the residents. So that means we have to start looking at ways of getting the businesses, the industry in Marine City to contribute more in whatever ways, maybe increase business license tax like we did previously. There has to be a plan in place to bring revenue into the city so that we can go forward and get grants to do the things that we need to do. You can't put it off. You've been doing it for far too long. There is no squeak room left. Say, oh, we'll put it off. We'll put it off. Oh, we had a surplus this year. I wish I could say what I think about your idea of that surplus. It's not a surplus. It's money left in the budget because you didn't do the things that you should be doing. Fix roads, fix sidewalks, do something about City Hall. Our retirement funding is millions of dollars behind. We're not ahead. We don't have a surplus. The elephant in the room has to be addressed. You continually ignore it at the peril of this city. You got to figure out ways to make it fair for everybody, but it's got to be addressed. Pat yourselves on the back for all the good things that you do, but until you do this, you're not doing your due diligence for Marine City. Thank you very much.
I just wanted to ask Mr. Moran, I'll put you on the spot. I believe that City Hall is in the 5-year plan. It's got a.
City Hall are we talking about?
We're at 300 Broadway.
Okay.
You've got a whole section in there about
Yes.
300 Broadway. I was looking through it and it's still in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of the things that we're waiting to have happen as far as Linda is concerned have been waiting on the new
The 5-year
city
plan.
plan and the recreation plan. And that's in the hands right now of this commission and the citizens. So as soon as we get that rolled out, that's one more step along the way. And I'm very happy that you guys decided to keep Linda, because to stop the process now would be a huge setback, I think, in my opinion. Thank you.
Just to add something there, I would like to point out that the historic value of City Hall is hard to weigh in a dollar value, but look at what we have been able to do, we as a city here, not just the commission, with our historic downtown. Do you think we would have this kind of success with a strip mall? I mean, that's what would have happened if we had let them knock all the buildings down and take their grant money back then. So there is value in using that building. So, thank you.
The infrastructure we're budgeting for. It takes time to build that up. You're also gonna be looking at long-term loans. There's no other way around that because that's gonna be like a 25 to 30-year project. Roads and infrastructure are not gonna get done overnight. We know that. As soon as she gets the SAW grant and we know what we have to do, then we have a whole laundry list of where we're gonna start. That's why you have the additional funds on the water sewer. That's why we have a road fund for local street funds. I mean, there are things there. The bridge took a lot of that money, so now we have to build that back up, because that was a big project. Luckily, we didn't have to pay for the bulk of that, the state did. So there are things that we're doing. Some of these ideas, I just want to read some of the ones that you put down here just for the factors. First one was build a new city hall, community center behind the library and sell 303 South Water, which is the Guy Center. I don't see the second half of that. Selling the Guy Center is a good idea. The second one was build a new community center behind the library and leave City Hall downtown. Now, that was talked about before. Our prior city manager wanted to do that. He couldn't get the Tifa board to work with him. They didn't want to do the plans or anything. He could have done it fairly reasonably. So we still have Tifa money that could be used for a lot of this stuff if we don't blow it all. Build a new city hall with meeting space behind the library and leave 303 South Water a community center. Build a new city hall community center in one of the downtown parks. I'd say that's a big negative. I wouldn't even touch that with a 10-foot pole. Purchase an existing building and convert to a city hall community center. That's a good idea. That would save some of the building costs. Purchase an existing building for city hall and keep the Guy Center for community use and public meetings. Oh, and one of the things we did use the Guy Center for, we used it as a haunted house. We had that facility one weekend, and I know Bill was involved at one time when they wanted to put a teen rec center there, but they couldn't get the support of people to help watch over it. Get volunteers. Another one here, purchase vacant property and build a new city hall community center. Build an addition to 300 Broadway to meet the current needs. I'd say the restrictions with the historic district would make that pretty expensive. Another one, move back into 300 Broadway and disregard/remove the historic elements. Another one, maintain City Hall at 303 South Water, the Guy Center, and develop a community center with meeting space at 300 Broadway. Or keep things the way they are and forget about a community center. Those were the lists on, those were what she had on the list. So, suggestions. We've heard everybody say that they don't want their tax money used on 300 Broadway, even though $700,000 of TIFA money was used on it anyway, which was improperly used. It's still going to need more work on the exterior because there's tons and tons of spalted brick that were never completely fixed on there, so that's going to be an issue with the building. Myself, I'd rather see us look at something a little bit more user-friendly, ADA accessible, out of downtown, maybe closer to where everything we have here. We already have the police department, the fire department, the library, all on this side of town. It seems more practical. It's too bad that at the time that they didn't buy the Ward Cottrell School, which would have been a perfect city hall. We all know it, and that was another thing that we missed out on. So I think we really got to do our homework here if we want to look at something and put some cost figures together so that people know what ideas and what this would cost and how we could fund it before everybody makes a decision on where we're going to go with it. So we really need a lot more information for the public, and we need input from the public on a lot of these issues. So if you have other ideas to add to this list, I think Mr. Squires, he brought up the property back here. That was his idea.
How big is this property?
It just goes to the bike
what you
path.
see?
Yeah. But if that goes straight back and then it connects into Hanover over there, so there's 8 acres right behind here, and that's what he's talking about, straight back. And so that's, that was supposed to be condominiums and it never got developed. And then the condo association ended up getting that property. I think it was due to taxes from the original builder. It was a big mess. So, I mean, it's another idea. That's a big chunk of property within the city limits. I'm surprised the builder hasn't jumped on that one, but anyway, that's, I think we have to put a lot more together for the public on kind of what we're thinking.
We could work on putting some numbers together for different costs on some of your, at least preliminary costs on some of your suggestions, couldn't we? and maybe have a more of a town hall or something, try to elicit more feedback from the community. I think, and it's a standalone issue. It's something that I think we need to talk about, and not during a meeting, but more two-way dialogue with the community, and maybe at maybe a different location or somewhere to try and get more feedback from the community.
Or ideas, just ideas?
Yes, Mr. Turner.
So first question I have is the 6,000 square feet, that number, how did you come up with that?
That's pretty much what we're using now. So
So the Guy Center. that was-
between the Guy Center, the storage space downstairs,
Okay.
and the space here,
This meeting room?
this meeting space, yeah.
Okay, that's how you came up with that?
Yeah.
All right. And I like what Mr. Simpson was pointing out is, first thing you got to do is determine what your needs are, how you plan to use this space that you're talking about. I mean, if we're talking about a community center that's just a card playing room, that's one consideration. If we're just talking about a meeting room like this, it's another consideration. I mean, that's why I questioned first, how'd you come up with 6,000 square feet? But that's based on current,
That's for one of the options if we do a
but that's
new
based on
space for
current
everything.
buildings. That's not saying utilizing the space to its best. It's just saying that's what we currently have. And that's how I came up with that number.
Yeah.
Okay.
At a minimum, if we were to replicate meeting space in our office and storage,
Right.
we'd need approximately 6,000 square feet.
Right.
You know, some of it isn't optimized the best, and some would be kind of re-optimized. You know, I mean, just taking the footprint of this place, you know,
Right.
we have hallway, we have restrooms that we'd need public restrooms. So it's just an approximation.
So the first thing on the list is the needs, right? And then the usage, what you plan to use it, how you plan
Well,
to use it.
you know, what are we using? You know,
Right.
it goes down to this, you know, would we want to have a complete building, you know, with everything up to and including police? Or is it just a community center, or is it our office?
Right.
You know, there's so many possibilities and factors that it makes it a little bit difficult. And that's why I kind of threw all of these options that I've heard since I've been here
That's good.
for us to talk about and consider. You know, we can, I guess, take it the next step and get some ideas about what costs would be for each option.
Okay. One more question. So 300 Broadway sits on a historic district, correct? We have a historic commission
Yep.
that oversees the activities there.
Yep.
Don't we have to have some input from that group also?
If we did anything there,
If
yes.
we try to do anything with
Yep.
Broadway?
Just to the
Definitely.
exterior, though, not to the interior.
And it
That
also-
historic district only affects the exterior of the building.
You would have to consult them.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks. That's it.
I think what Dave raises is a good point, is you have to, we went through this in a different township, and we restructured an existing building into a new, which I think you've seen, and was a nice result. But we had to sit down and figure out what services do we want to pump out of that building, because we had other locations that could deliver other services. You have, your police are already housed someplace. You don't necessarily have to have a building that has a community center, because you could deliver that service somewhere else.
Right.
In an existing building. So I think you have to decide first, what services do you want to pump out of your city hall? What do you need to deliver to the community from the city hall that isn't being delivered somewhere else? And then you learn what box you need. That was a good analysis, Dave.
And one of the other considerations for a community center city hall is for recreation programs. Right now, we're paying to utilize the school, and, you know, they use a gym. Would we want to consider building a building or getting a building somewhere that could replace that usage as
Right.
well?
You have to, those are the key decisions.
Or an emergency shelter like we needed that one time.
And when you do things like that, you trigger different funding mechanisms. Certainly, the tornado shelter does does have money available if you house that.
It's a good point you make. I mean, we have to first determine what the services are we're gonna provide.
What is it
And
you're
then what the square footage need is for that.
And that's kind of why we're looking for feedback from
Right.
the public. What is it that people want? What works, what doesn't? This is just a starting point, really.
Yeah.
You could hold a special meeting, a single-purpose special meeting with a public notice.
I think that's a good idea. I'd really like to see if we can get that, something like that put together,
We can work on
a draft on something.
Mhm.
Do we need a motion to start that, or just,
No,
good, okay.
just the mayor going like this.
There's a lot of power in that neck.
I would
Yeah.
question consideration for timing for something with the holidays coming up. Is that something that we want within the holiday timeframe or
After
afterwards?
deer season.
I think you're gonna have to look.
Please, please.
Because it would
after
potentially
deer
be
season.
nestled like between Thanksgiving and Christmas, maybe?
Yeah, I
think that would work.
Good time for it.
I think the biggest thing is, advance notice. A week notice doesn't give anybody anything.
No,
2 weeks
you-
is barely,
we-
we really need to get a lot, because right
15 to
now, 30 days
21
from now,
days.
we're already talking December, right? And then,
Mhm.
So we'd
We-
have to get this out and publicized
Right.
very soon.
I mean, we could look at a date right now and see what's available based on people's calendars.
But don't tag anything onto your agenda for that
Yeah.
meeting.
Would it be a workshop or a special meeting?
I would hold it as a special meeting. Open Meetings Act, published.
Mhm.
Are we looking
Yes,
at a
Mr.
Thursday?
I think as we try to set a schedule for this, we need to fill in some of these blanks for cost estimates here. So that may take a little more, may drive us into January, but I don't think anybody,
I don't think cost estimates would take very long. I mean, everything would be
They're gonna be estimates.
so general.
They're gonna be estimates.
Right, and but that's something you can work with, but you may, and Lisa just pointed out a good point when she was looking at her calendar, and I looked over her shoulder, all the different things that we have going in December,
yeah.
with the old
December's
newsboys.
not a practical.
No, that's not a very good month
I
in.
also don't think we get a lot of great turnout. People are so over-programmed in December, it's difficult. And if that's what we really want, is community input, I think
More
we
in
need to.
January.
January?
Do you want to do it one of the off Thursday nights?
Yes.
Yes.
So sandwich in between, well,
We don't do the 4th.
typically, we cancel the first meeting in January, and that'd be on the 4th. So that would leave either the 11th or 25th of January.
11th, sounds good. We wouldn't have a meeting before it, so, I mean, does anyone have any objections to the 11th?
No?
no, just that. Is it giving time after the holidays to get people thinking on this? We really do want people to come in and talk to us.
That's 11 days, and
And if we know
hopefully
now,
no
people can-
snowstorms.
Well, and that gives us an opportunity to put information out on our electronic board in front of DPW, on Facebook, any other means that we can put it out, and then a public notice in the paper.
Gives
as
you a
well.
chance with all these other events to talk to people too.
Mhm.
We could develop little flyers that we could hand out during some of the events like the parade.
Joe
And the
Dog
mayor's
sale.
Christmas cards.
There's
Joe
there's
Dog
gotta be
Day.
Christmas cards.
Actually, we are going to be doing
Sounds
another
good.
newsletter with the tax bills that will be going out, and they'll be going out prior to December 1st, so we'll be able to put the date.
That'd be
on that.
Mhm.
There you go.
Sounds good.
So, yeah, on the 11th.
The 11th.
I take it this will be the location, because we won't have a new building by then.
We good, team? Out in the repair bay? Oh, okay. That's good, all right. Anything else on this for now? Hearing none, let's move on to financial business disbursements, including payroll for $343,857.41.
Move to approve disbursements including payroll of $343,857.41.
Support.
Hearing motion, support. Any questions or concerns on the expenditures? Disbursements.
Oh. I see another expense for the Inn on Water Street for Envirologic. Do you have all the totals finally for that whole
We're gonna
project?
probably get one more bill, I think, and it'll be closed out.
Okay, and then are you gonna give us kind of a breakdown of all that? I'd like to kind of see a breakdown of all that.
In what regards?
The amounts, you know.
I mean, like a summary report that we can
Yeah.
print out
Yep.
to
on
what
that
was
one.
paid from the grant and the loan account.
Yep.
Sure.
Let's see.
Any other questions on disbursements? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Buckley?
Yes.
Commissioner Simpson?
Yes.
Commissioner Turner?
Yes.
Mayor Danabush?
Yes.
Commissioner Avery?
Yes.
Commissioner Hendrick?
No.
Commissioner Clausen?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, city managers report.
Nothing to report this time.
Commissioner privilege. Mr. Avery, you'd like to start us out?
I guess I would like to comment and thank the citizens of Marine City for a very nice Halloween night. I mean, we had a lot of kids come by, absolutely no troubles. Not that there's been bad things before, but everybody was having a good time, and the kids, I think that was handled very well. Now, the weather helps, of course, but anyway, the citizens did a good job of making it a good night. But that's it. Thank you.
I was just going to say, it's been a great week for football. I got to go to the Big House and watch the University of Michigan win against Rutgers, and the Steelers won on, I'm sorry. Steelers beat the Lions, you know, that little thing there. Anyhow, our hearts are with the Mariners as they go to Frankenmuth this Friday, and we can support them in any way we can with our prayers, our presence, so forth and so on. It's an exciting thing to be a part of. That's it.
Well, I got tied in with the library, Friends of the Library. They're having a book sale to support the library. It'll be on the bulletin board at the library. I can't tell you exactly the date, but they got all the books ready to go for that, so that'll help out the community. Thank you.
I've got a few things. Again, congratulations, the Mariner football team, and wish them luck in Frankenmuth this week. Hopefully their success can continue. I want to remind folks, 26 Mile Road, Marine City Highway will have a detour again, starting Monday through the 17th, according to the Road Commission at this point. They're replacing another bridge, and we're thankful that we're getting this work done on our main thoroughfare, but it's not without convenience, so folks are aware of that. So it starts Monday through at least the 17th. So that's all I have.
Lisa?
Okay, couple things. First, I wanted to wish the Mariners and Coach Glodich good luck for Frankenmuth also. The games are always good. That one against Richmond was really a good game, even though it rained. The second thing is, don't forget, November 21st is the Santa Parade at 7 p.m. Another one is the craft show for the old newsboys. Get out of here. That's going to be December 2nd. That's the Joe Dog sale. And last thing is, I'd like to know in your newsletter if we can comment about snow plowing and contractors mounting snow up on top of a lot of our sidewalks into huge ice balls in the winter where people can't navigate them. We have that happen every year, especially along Parker here, a couple down going towards Kmart. So I know you sent something out last year, but just a reminder again that they can't pile it up on those sidewalks if possible. And that's it.
I'd like to wish Pansy Shorkey. Happy 100th birthday. That was the 3rd of November. Also, we're going to go up to Frankenmuth on Friday night. I put a call into the mayor of Frankenmuth, so let's see how we do. I'm not yet, but I'm going to tell him that he needs a little bit more seating on the visitor side, and beware he's going to be invaded for a night.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's what I'm going for. No, I've got plenty of pumpkins. We're getting rid
Take
of
'em some.
pumpkins. Yeah, no, we're good. Other than that, we do have a charity run coming up for, in November for, huh? Yes. And if, they're doing sign-ups now, and if anybody would like to help sponsor that, it's a great cause. And, we'll be there. My wife and I are gonna be there, and we'll help with, first aid. We won't be running.
I was gonna
We're
say.
not running, no. No. We talked about it, no. And we may need more first aid if I did run it, so. I need a motion for adjournment
I'll
on
make a
that
motion
order.
to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah.